Доброго дня.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're glad to welcome you today at the start of the presentation of the Mental Health Ambassadors Program in Ukraine. It seems to us that this topic is extremely important, and we're really glad that for the first time in Ukraine there is an opportunity to create a friendly and safe society that is free from stigma and discrimination against people with mental disorders. My name is I'm a head of the Association of Social Impact. We are the partners of the project of Mental Health for Ukraine, and we're really glad together with the project to implement this Mental Health Ambassadors program in Ukraine. We are going to have today a very sincere, very friendly, and a very safe talk about why this Mental Health Ambassadors program is extremely important for Ukraine and why it's being realized at the moment, and what it means to each one of us, for people who don't have mental disorders, to people who have mental disorders, what it means for the relatives of these people, and why is it important. Today I'm going to have some very interesting and some very pleasant guests in the studio with me, with whom we're going to talk in order to learn what's the idea of the program and how it's going to be implemented. And the first two speakers, my first two guests, it's Heiko Königstein, a leader of the project Mental Health for Ukraine, and Ludmila Ivazan, the psychologist, expert in mental health, and the leader of the non-government organization Mental Health. And I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to English, but you will have the translation on Facebook. If anybody is interested to listen to this in English, you can join to our YouTube translation. In Facebook we have Ukrainian, and on YouTube we have English. And also I would like to ask everybody, all of our guests who are listening to us, please leave your questions below our online interview below the Facebook. So I'm going to start to talk with Heiko. Heiko?
Hello. It's great that you are here, that you came from Lviv, and I think that it's a very important occasion today. And can you please explain why this ambassador program is launching today and why it's important and what it's about?
Yes, so the ambassador program is a network of people who live with mental health disorders and their family members, and who want to speak out in public about their experience. And they receive support from media communication experts and from mental health experts to, for example, record videos for social media or to do appearances in public events like this one today. And they have received training from other ambassador program from abroad, from England, and so we will increase this network hopefully in the future and make talking about mental health more normal.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important? So is it actual to gather like the community of ambassadors who have like some mental health disorders, so they're close one, maybe you know like some international experience, if it works and how it works?
Yes. So it is very important, because if we normalize the conversation about mental health, then people will be more ready to ask for help in an early stage. So when somebody experiences a mental health problem, it can be something very simple like a lot of stress and lack of sleep and problems like this. If it's okay to talk about these mental health problems, then people also will ask for help and support earlier. And if we do ask for help early, then it can prevent that we will have a more complex mental health disorder later on. Our ambassadors can tell the whole story, how different stresses and circumstances came together to develop a mental health disorder. But my point is, it's important to start talking about it early, because it will prevent a lot of more challenges later on. Just to give an example, in Ukraine, the average age for a diagnosed depression when it starts is 26 years old. 26 years this is an age where people are starting their job, they plan to create a family, and having a really clinically diagnosed depression at this age has a big impact for the whole rest of the life. It means that before this, many years before already, there have been warning signs, there have been problems which are much simpler, and if we can prevent the mental health disorder from developing at an early stage, then we can avoid a lot of challenges later in life.
Mm-hmm. How it's like this program will work? So what people should do and who our target audience is?
So people should share their stories with us. They can do this through our website. If they want to be part of this program, we can offer some support, information. We have developed a package of information and documents that can help people to share their story in public. And we also organize events like this to speak in public and give a podium.
Yeah, because today we will have like the first ambassadors of our program who decided to participate in this program and to be like the role models for other people. So I think that it's important that we have already had these people. And one of the reasons of developing and launching this program is like work against or fight with stigma. Mm-hmm. So what is like the issue in Ukraine or in other countries with stigma, if you talk about the mental health disorders, and why it's important to talk against stigma and to fight with stigma? Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the topic of stigma and discrimination really has three layers. The top layer is the information. So many people just don't know a lot about mental health, and they can read and learn about mental health. This is what we have done since the beginning of our campaign in the framework of the Mental Health for Ukraine project. We have built a website, we have created social media posts just to inform people about mental health. Now, if you don't have knowledge about mental health, then the result is that you lack knowledge, you are ignorant to some aspects of mental health. But then there is also an emotional level, which means that you have certain prejudices against people who have mental health disorders. And this is stigma. So this is an emotional level where I have a first feeling about somebody or about mental health which is negative. And this is why we want to involve personal stories of real people, because we want to connect with people emotionally as well to change these prejudices. Then the third level is discrimination. This is when prejudices and stigma become so structural in society that people with mental health disorders have actual disadvantage in life. They, for example, cannot take a driver's license because they have been in a psychiatric institution, or they cannot take a job in a public service. This is discrimination. So we have these three layers, and we see in international practice that it is not enough to just give information about mental health. It is important to share stories of real people to connect with the audience emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope that our program will be successful in Ukraine, and we invite like the people to participate in this program all around Ukraine. And зараз, thank you, Heiko. І зараз я хотіла.
And I would like to also talk to Ludmila. Ludmila has a vast experience of work in Ukraine with people with mental disorders. I know that you do a lot so that this topic wouldn't be that stigmatized and would be clear and understandable to various people. So, from your practice, have you ever faced discrimination against people with mental disorders? Talking to your clients, to patients, how common is this issue in Ukraine? Well, basically our story probably started with the sad discrimination case, but which led to the creation of organization. Because we had a patient who was, first of all, in her background, she was an artist, she was a painter, and she loved to create various artistic masterpieces. But when she got into the hospital, into the facility, she was fired, not because of the work she did, but because of where she was over that period of time. And at that point, that touched us so much that we wanted to change this, want to make this different. And from her story starts our whole way, our whole pathway. We decided to create some community, some space where she could continue creating, being artistic, continuing her work. And that was a very small micro project within the hospital from which our whole organization started when we went beyond the hospital. So discrimination against people with mental disorders in Ukraine is it's very hard to judge. You cannot operate with any statistic data because there is stigma, and when this discrimination happens, we as an organization can see these stories, we can face them in communication with people, but some official data, some official registry of this data just doesn't exist because people don't speak about this for one part, because part of our population accepts this as normal, and the other part is just ashamed to share about this, so you can't really speak of any really objective data. But there is a research across Ukraine about stigma and discrimination, which also very interestingly point to the fact that the medical community and the psychologists, so basically the specialists that are on the front line of mental health, they are the most stigmatizing, discriminating community. That's funny, but that's the way it is. But to say how many people, what's the incidence, and how many people have to overcome mental disease daily, you can only hear about that. What we hear is that people, when they stay in their work, they have to conceal, they have to hide their problems. For example, when they have some exacerbation of their mental health problem, they have to hide this because, yes, indeed, that has consequences, and we have a lot of stories like that. Within the context of what you're talking about, we do have a pretty vast stigma. Does sharing personal experiences, personal stories, what we have in the ambassadors program of people who have are on the way, or because this, as a rule, these are disorders that last in time and are long-lasting throughout their life, how that is going to help change this situation? Well, this is the story. Sharing your experience, which is directed first of all at the change of attitude towards people who have this experience. It's not about that, it's about changing the attitude towards the mental health, because in our organization we first of all really wanted to change the attitude towards the people who have that experience of mental disorder, so that people will have a different attitude to that person and to avoid discrimination. But later on, through our experience, we understood that the reason, if I say that, oh, I had some psychosis or neurosis or whatever diagnosis, the problem is not that I have this experience. The problem is that we all have an attitude toward mental health, and it's disrespectful. We think it's not something that you have to take care of. You know, it's like we speak, it's like they say, it's a proverb, while you have the health, you don't speak about it. And I really support Heiko's thesis here that in prevention, if you just daily take care of your mental health, you can really avoid a lot of these stories. And these personal stories specifically, they allow people to change their attitude towards mental health, because that's the way our brain works. Even if we take any subject, for example, if we take a pen and you explain how to use the pen, we're going to explain this via story. For example, I can write with a pen. So yes, basically, even in complex social dimensions, the story in a completely different way affects how people perceive information, and not just like I say, oh, you have to take care of your health, that's really useful, please eat well, sleep well, do sports. Now, unfortunately, that information does a very small change and little changes the emphasis, but story has that large effect. And yeah, I would also like to join to what Heiko said, what you're saying. When we developed the ambassadors program, we did some deep interviews with people with mental disorders, because for us it was very important to understand how they approach this, what motivates or demotivates them, so that this program would be a very good one. And what's interesting, we talked to people 25 plus years old who were diagnosed with mental disorders, but most of these people, they faced the first symptoms in the teenage years. And it's the fact that people faced it a lot but didn't care too much, and there were many different explanations for that, like teenage, adolescence, and stuff, and it eventually led to complex treatment and complex feeling perception of themselves in this condition. So yes, indeed, one of the goals of this program and this campaign is for young people and their parents and their family, so that they would treat this with understanding and seriousness and would turn for care.
I'd like to add that there is an individual story behind it, but there is also a big need for Ukrainian society and Ukrainian economy to speak early and prevent early mental disorders. We know that the Ukrainian economy loses every year around 100 billion hryvnia in economic power because people cannot be part of the productive life, cannot take jobs, because they have a mental disorder. And this is 100 billion, which is just lost. And this is also actually one reason why many countries who have a very efficient health system, such as England, New Zealand, Canada, they have understood, if I invest in self-care of people, invest in awareness-raising campaigns, it will save a lot of money later on, because the economic losses and the treatment of more complex cases is much, much more expensive than investing into prevention. So prevention is much, much better than intervention later on.
Так, thank you so much. Людмила, а в мене в контексті...
Ludmila, within the context, because we're talking about the mental disorders as a kind of an umbrella term, generalized term, can you also, for our audience, could you tell a little more? What are the mental disorders? What are we talking about exactly? Because for us it's important to get people involved so they understand to whom we are talking to exactly. Yeah, right. So mental disorders, I'll try to be brief about this. It's when you have a disorder of your mental well-being, and I'm not gonna get into the diagnosis because that's medical, that's not my dimension. But nevertheless, if the person has bad sleep, is feeling anxious, or some symptoms that they haven't had before, you can turn to the doctor and they will give you guidance. But if you're talking about turning to the ambassadors program here, there's a very broad corridor, because unfortunately there is a large, vast number of mental disorders, and if you have the experience of overcoming it, and it doesn't matter if it's been long-lasting experience or it was some one single episode that the person overcame, I think that's a reason to share that experience. Because, and I would also like to add to what Heiko said, that in Ukraine, in addition to the sum that's being lost in the budget of Ukraine, there's also one nuance there, that the statistics in Ukraine about the disability, so these are people who get or disabled, and the reference is different from what it's like in European countries. So what it means that people don't refer for help, and then they refer for help when the disease is very severe and progressive, and more people are disabled, get disability. So the emphasis shifts from where the person is helped from different side, but in fact, if these people are going to be shared, it will promote people referring for help early, and there won't be this progressing of the diseases, of the disorders. Okay, right, and if we talk about the ambassadors program, in addition to the fact that we engage people, and as Heiko said, we're going to support these people, because for us it's very important to create this safe, as much as possible, safe environment, and to help them, probably to help them learn, because we really want people to share their stories, and took part in various events that we're going to organize and that are going to be organized within their communities. How do you think, what kind of effect can that have on the changes that we have and the attitude towards the mental health, and basically the attitude towards mental disorders as they are? I think here you have to mention that the ambassadors program, it's not just a story about sharing your experience. It's also a community story. It's a chance to join together, because among these people that are an organization that we talk to, one of the main messages that that the person goes through is that I'm alone in this. And the ambassadors program has a chance to create this community and this atmosphere of community where you can say that you're not alone, you're not the one who's been through this. There are many people, they have their personal experience, they've gone through this in their way, but it means that you can do that as well. And in that way, in that sense, the ambassadors program is not only useful in the changing the attitude towards mental health so that everybody refers to doctor in time to save countries money or something like that, but it also gives a chance to join for the people who have this sort of experience and to understand that they're not alone in this. They're not alone in the world who go through this, and they have a chance to communicate, to be friends, to support each other, in addition to the support that the project can and this ambassadors platform can give. Right, and another question to you. How the service organizations like yours and others in Ukraine, how can they support this program? What are their role? What is their role? Because we think that that's a defining role of the non-government organizations in Ukraine and in Kiev who already interact with people with mental disorders, who provide support to them, who help them so that they would be included in the work of this ambassadors program. Like, please talk to your colleagues. Yeah, here there are a few points here. First of all, that the small organizations are very local. And that means that they really have a very close contact with people who are going through mental disorders. And that can speed up in the field locally the creation of these communities and help people quicker refer to the doctor. So it's a quicker way of communication. We as an organization, we know people, we have people who are ready to share experience or not ready. That's one thing. And another thing is that the support of these people, if it comes from local organizations, it's also going to be much more massive, much more broad, because we may know more individually who needs what support. Maybe someone needs more informational support. We can maybe tell them more face to face, more about the program. So basically, the ambassadors program and the local organizations within them, it's like an umbrella. It's like an umbrella of interaction that would allow this project to get it closer to people. Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for your involvement in the program, and we will hope that together with the organizations that already work with people who need help, we would be able to really make this program national, but in fact very local at the same time, and very oriented at the needs of the people within the communities, and help them join and interact. Thank you very much, Heiko and Ludmila, and we will continue our talk with our next guest. Welcome again. Welcome everybody at the presentation of the Mental Health Ambassadors Program. And we can say we have a second episode. We have a kind of a little of talk show so that everybody would stay interested to talk to us and observe what we're doing. And in the second episode, let's say, of our event today, we're going to talk about how important is the role of the media in changing the attitude towards the mental health topic and the thought leaders, Roman, because we're also going to talk to you as a thought leader. And in our studio, we can say, I'm feeling kind of that way. We just talked to Alexander about that. Alexander is a journalist. Alexander Mitina is a special correspondent of the TSN 1+1. And today, at the moment, we work together. We are preparing a series of episodes on the mental health topic. And we talked to Alexander that we're going to have pretty interesting story when Alexander is not, when I'm going to be asking questions to her and not her. That's pretty interesting. So Alexander, thank you very much for being with us. And again, we have Roman Nabeshnek with us, who is a co-author of the and veteran of Russian-Ukrainian war, and the person who is probably one of the first ones last year when we turned to you, shared your experience of the problems and solving problems with mental health, and for which we're really grateful to you that you were so brave to take this step. We read your posts and we know that you wrote a lot of personally and raised this issue and probably let people think of that and change their attitudes to this as well. And that's what we'd like to talk about. We talk about the role of media and the role of public figures and these changes that we want to make in Ukraine and within this program of ambassadors that we're launching. And we'll start with Roman. Roma, can you again share your story and why did you decide to do this? And how did you come to this? Well, yeah, in fact, my role here is it's a secondary or tertiary of some even further link, because I was motivated to make this story public. The post of my other friend who was motivated to make this post, who was motivated by her other friend. So it's basically a chain of somebody had some experience of treatment, of understanding what they're going through, and my friend who, as a conclusion at this year, said that yes, I had this, I went through this, and I want to make this public in order to, if even one person, if it will help even one person who's going to read this, if it's going to help them understand what's happening to them, if it's going to help them understand that this is a problem that you can deal with, the problem that you have to deal with, because it does affect basically on your daily life, on everything that you do, on our perception of happiness, on our decision making. And I texted her back then. It was even before I started the therapy. I'm not gonna call any names, but I said that, listen, the fact that you wrote this post, you can say it worked because I'm that one person who, so you can really live, you can be proud of yourself, you did your mission, you did my mission. And I decided to, at the end of the experience, I decided to pass the baton and make the story public. And I'll just briefly say I had two experiences of overcoming mental disorders. First one was, of course, related to coming back from war. I had this very quick moment of demobilization. So basically, like Tuesday, I was on the front line where there is fighting, beyond the zero line. I'm doing some tasks, some mission, but on Thursday I'm back in Kiev, restaurants, celebrations, all beautiful, funny people, not in military uniform, and all of that, it's hard. First of all, it's complex, it's complicated, it's hard to understand, it's hard to be conscious about, but I personally had no assumptions about how I, at the same time, went for some physical examination after the war, and at the same time I turned to a psychiatrist to maybe kind of play it a little in advance, but we kind of opened all the anxieties on the way that were related to the physiological experience, because when you live somewhere out of city and you have some shift that happens 2 by 2 at night, then your organism gets used to this and you're kind of at home, but still you wake up at 2 a.m. because you feel like you are entering the shift, and then at 4 you go to bed, at 6 you wake up again, you're looking for a gun under your pillow, and you have to go for a shift. So, and all of that affects your life rhythm. So here, also, at the same time, when I was demobilized, it was October 2016. It was already kind of 2 years, I think third year in the war, and this topic was not new. People started to talk about it because the first waves of demobilization and demobilized participants of the war action, they already came back and they started to face these problems, and there were some initiatives coming up of the psychiatrists that wanted to help. My personal experience relating to the Veteran Help Project, who did very big work in this direction, and my second experience that pushed me to motivated me to write this post into this topic. This was my first entrepreneur activity, my first year in entrepreneurship in business. It was a year filled with stress. If you can fill it up with 100%, there was like 1,500% filled up with stress. All the first experience of hiring people, firing people, any financial issues, all of that pressed on me very, very hard, and there was little rest in between, and it all led to that at the end I was diagnosed with depression. So at some point I came back to the psychiatrist with whom a different psychiatrist. So I turned to some, let's say, standard non-instrument tool, and it didn't help. Understand that, yes, I'm aware of some of the tools, how to work with this, with anxiety, with stress, and so on. I know a lot of things, but in this situation, that just didn't work. And at some point, my therapist said to me that, okay, let's probably turn to a psychiatrist for some medication, therapy, because the standard approaches that just don't work. And yes, it was about a half-a-year course that helped me to launch some of the processes again. Like, literally, it looked like this. I understand that I have a work day starting at 8 a.m., 8 o'clock, and I work very intensively, let's say up to 6, 7 p.m., and I think it's pretty active and well and all right. But at some point I start to fade. And fading, it's like when you feel that, okay, you have to make some decisions. There are people, partners, suppliers and stuff, but you look at all these tasks and you understand, no, I don't want any of this. I don't want to do any of this. And I've noticed that in myself, noticed that this at 5 p.m. I start to turn off, then at 4, then I come to work at 9, and by 12 a.m. I don't want anything because I just have no strength to do any of this, and that was kind of a ring for me, or kind of a call. But a positive side of the therapy, of course, and therapy and treatment for depression did give positive result. That last year, during the quarantine and all this COVID story, I entered that at the peak of my therapy, and I was absolutely like, okay, we have new challenges, I'm ready to do that, I'm ready to take on that, and that helped me to kind of go through our last year. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. Because it's great that you share. It's great that you referred for help early on and that you were helped. How do you think? What helped you make this possible? Who affects this? Who has an effect of that? To what extent the environment and the people who surrounded you were important in helping you and supporting you in the process, in the treatment and the interaction? How important is that? Well, 100%. There was some support from my wife, but other than that, probably even more, I live probably in a bubble of these change leaders and entrepreneurs and people who always kind of are 2 steps ahead in some of their fields of life. And to say that I had to overcome some pressure, some outside resistance, I can't say that, but every therapy and every single experience like that, it's impossible without the personal decision that you made. So the person, in that way or other way, has to take that decision on their own, and it's very, very important. This is indeed the most important thing. When you understand that yourself, when you're conscious about that, no outside advisor, there's no advice, there's no there's no word that like, dude, okay, you probably should go to therapist. You probably should refer for help. All of that doesn't play any major role. The decisive role, and probably the most important and the major thing that stays with the person later on forever, it's this trigger, it's this alarm, it's this ring that you only have yourself, and nobody's going to take care of you that as much as you should take care of yourself. And that's the most important thing. It was to support yourself, to provide support to yourself, and to tell that to yourself. And then after that, these are all additional factors. So, and you with your colleagues, with your partners, did you share that you are in the middle of a therapy, that so that they would take that into account or not? Well, it was in our team. It kind of turned out that I was not the only one. We had I don't know what the percentage, but quite a lot of people. We had some hear about this who is on therapy. Oh, like, I started to take new pills today. I'm gonna tell you tomorrow what's the experience with them. And sometimes we make jokes about it, that this should be included in the conversation when we hire people. This person in therapy, or has undergone therapy, or is in the middle of that. So in our group, in our team, we have quite a, we can say, maybe it doesn't look healthy from the outside. It's not stigma, but we kind of came to an opposite side of that. We came to humorizing this. When all of these stages, acceptance, understanding yourself, we already came to that, and we can communicate in one language. And I can say that basically we have some strict hierarchy, like Roma is a director and everybody else is subordinate. No, we communicate. We talk about these personal issues just to kind of understand what's happening in our lives, because we have a business and it's kind of a service and very emotional business, first of all, rather than in products. And we understand when our guests come to us, you don't prescribe checklists, you don't have any scripts of communication. If people feel themselves bad, or if people are unhappy or anxious, that passes on to the guest, and it doesn't have to be like that. And even from the point of view of the business, I understand how important it is for everybody to be in some conscious, some healthy, adequate conditions, so that would be a healthy team, mentally as well. But please tell us, when you shared your post and some time passed on, like a year, and you're saying that you're in therapy, what do you think, this circle that started afterwards, did you feel that in addition to sharing, you also helped someone? I can't remember if somebody texted me, but I think that it didn't stay unnoticed. I think that what was the goal, what was the objective that you were following doing that? Well, first of all, I promised my friend that at the end of the day I will do this and I will pass the baton there. And secondary, I'm talking about the community, the society of people that I'm talking to, the guests, the entrepreneurs, to some change leaders and people who work in non-government organizations or in public sector, for whom this is a common thing, sort of. But the second important part of my life that relates to the veteran community, it's probably the field that I haven't gone into, that you have to work with. And yeah, right, we live in Kiev, which in many senses is oversaturated with various programs, grants, and projects that not only Veteran Hub, but even other local things that work with smaller local communities. But if we talk about the regions, when you talk about not even oblast centers, but even smaller cities and villages, that's the communities, that's the society, that's the communities that you have to focus on, because they basically live with very old school perception of all this. And right, yes, and in this program we really want to work with local non-government organizations and gonna get the ambassadors involved, people who are going to share their stories within these local communities, because right, that's where this connection and closeness principle works, because the person who lives nearby share their experience. It kind of motivates people, so it would motivate people to do some changes with their health, like post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to talk to Alexander about that. We know how hard it is for people who come back from war to share their experience, how hard it's to share, not only share, but to recognize that they do have that problem, when they need to refer for help. And we know this from the world international story in the United States, God knows how many years after the Iraq war, and later on, how people work with veterans and constantly support them and help them overcome their mental disorders. But if we talk about the Ambassadors Program, what do you think of it? What's your attitude? And how important is it, the program that we're talking about today? And are you ready to be one of the ambassadors of this program? Definitely, I definitely know that you have to start talking about this more broadly. I definitely know people with whom I served in the military who have gone through all of these stages, all of these 5 stages of grief, as you know, who either stopped at some point and said, "Oh no, this is all bullshit, it's not for me, it's not about me, I'm all doing okay," and things like that. So for me, it's very important knowing the real specific people to talk about this. And maybe some of my first, when I tried to talk to them, maybe that didn't work some of the times that some of the attempts I did. But in the broad sense, I understand that these programs are going to help and can help change the lives of people for the better, to improve the general well-being, the general level of happiness, so that at the end of the day we would enter some top 20 happy nations. And this is, this is a very clear field. This is like a field that hasn't been worked on yet in Ukraine. Okay, so you're with us. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we're going to continue talking, because for us it's also a part of the veterans. It's also kind of a very important and very closed on one side. It's hard to get into that. It's people who've gone through that. I think that they can bring that information for the best, but because if I go there and talk about that, people are gonna say, what do you know about this? So thank you very much, Roman, and we're gonna continue interacting with you. We're gonna continue working together in order to go motivate people and really change their lives for the better. Alexandra, now in continuation of this topic, because today we're talking about how complicated it's hard to knock on the people, how hard it's hard to find the people, and right now in the project that you're working on the mental health and in overcoming the stigma, what have you faced when you started to communicate with people? What's the biggest problem that you see in our country? What do we need to work on, and how journalists and media can help about that? Well, indeed, I think the first big problem is starting from ourselves, from the media. When Roman said about his personal lived experience, I thought that indeed our media, when we talk about the mental disorders topic, even PTSD, we say about the veterans, we usually mention it when something bad happens, like there's been some incident, and I know it hurts to Roman a lot, like the person who knows about this a lot, when we hear from the news and there are some incidents regarding weapons and some maybe mental disorder was not even a part of that, but kind of the media generalizes it, assumes, and does the assumptions. And there were some examples when people went to rehabilitation centers and filmed them from the military officers who didn't even know whether they were filmed. So it's a topic, either you talk deeply about it, or you speak in terms of the person who faced this mental disorder, or you don't speak about it at all. Because when you assume, when you generalize and you don't know what you're talking about, that's the worst thing you can do for the stigma to continue existing. So it's very important for not journalists, not experts, not doctors to talk about it, but specific people who know what they're talking about, because we have this kind of a thing in the society, because I consider myself non-assumptuous person, but when I started to do this project, I understood how many stamps and stigmas I have in me. And when I heard about the mental disorders, first of all, I didn't think of the successful Roman that I have near with me and all the heroes that we have, talented as they are. But first of all, I started to think about the person is in that white shirt in the psychiatric facility. So it's that kind of a picture that I had in the society. And for those people who haven't personally faced this story, they have this picture and you have to break it. And it seems to me that if people who have faced mental disorders, if they would sincerely talk about their stories, I think they do a very good thing for unstigmatizing the society. Nobody else can do that great of an effect. So when I listen to the stories of these heroes, I really start to think, how good is it that we can show this, and how good is it that we have first chance to really show people publicly who talk about everything and everything. And when is that going to happen? It's going to start on Monday. We start on Monday in TSN. It's going to be as part of the TV news broadcast, where a lot of time is going to be every day throughout the week. We're going to dedicate a lot of time to mental disorders. We split the story into separate mental disorders that people face, the most common ones in Ukraine. There's going to be a separate broadcast on PTSD. There's going to be on Thursday. That comes on Thursday. There's going to be some general example. We were lucky to film how this system works in Czech Republic. That recently they had a system similar to ours. They also had all this post-Soviet, absolutely ruined psychiatric system with big inpatient facilities where people just don't want to go in. They don't even want to think that might go there someday. And they went through the reform. They are in the initial phase, but still they went further than Ukraine did. And we'll compare this to how the system works in Ukraine. And we'll try to show how would it look ideally. And when you prepared this broadcast, how hard was it to find people with the stories, and what impressed you the most? Maybe you would do some sort of a teaser so that people would know what they should wait for. People who are ready to talk, it was very hard to find them. It would be impossible to do that without you, 100%. It's great that there is such a program in Ukraine that already engages ambassadors that are ready to talk. We were not successful. We couldn't find people who live in small villages, small towns, because the smaller the town is, if I knew that only my little home is gonna know about that, I still wouldn't I wouldn't want to talk about it. So people in local communities, small communities, don't want to talk about that. And all the experts that we faced, that this doesn't depend on what town you live. On your profession, occupation, and stuff like that. Everybody faces mental disorders. Everybody faces it, but we're going to have very few people from small towns. And it was hard to find people with not artistic specialties who are ready to talk, because somehow there's also this assumption in the society that you can forgive this if this is an artistic person. If this is a person in some other specialty, then no, you cannot forgive this. This is not justified. So the thing that impressed me the most is that people who told us their difficult stories, every one of them was much more conscious in how to find their own happiness, in how to build their lives, than people that I usually talk to who don't have these mental disorders. It's certain, when you accept this, when you know that you're trying to do something with this, you become such a conscious person that, yeah, it's basically, you could really give people an advice to go through this way of understanding and accepting yourself, even people who don't have mental disorders. And also very much impressed by the phrase that one of the husband of our hero said. So is she not normal? Do they think that she's normal? Oh, I wish that our whole society consisted of people like that, that all people would be so open to speak about their problems. So I think, yes, this is a very touching story. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking this topic on. I know that this is not an easy topic. When we started, we faced this request to raise this topic on TV. And yes, the main idea is what you said, that if we're watching TV broadcasts, when we see mental disorders, it's purely when there's a scandal. As a rule, something with a scandal. And we have the picture forms in our minds that people with mental disorders, these are people in a very severe condition who don't let their relatives or neighbors live normal life. But it's not like that. If we talk about clinical depression, every third person in the world might face this in their lives. And this relates to a large number of people. And I very much hope that with the help of this project that you're implementing right now, and basically raising of this topic in the media, I think media are going to become partners of this less stigmatized society. Because indeed, it's better not to talk about this rather than to talk about it the way it happens right now. Because the ambassadors, people who have lived or are still living through this experience, they're the heroes of their own kind. That 100%, that they are getting treated, they are going through this, and they still are ready to help others. And as we said, Roman, thank you very much. And we're going to have our next hero, our next guest. We're going to specifically talk about that, being brave, being courageous, overcoming this disorder, and helping others, and continuing to live on. I wish you good health. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to the broadcast starting from Monday, and we're going to continue talking to you and working together with you. Okay, and right now we're going to continue talking with our ambassador of our Mental Health Ambassador Program, one of the first ones that joined us. It's Anastasia Klemenko, and before that, we'll watch a brief video about the history of this person. Basically, everything started, it was, I think, 6th or 7th year, I started to develop panic attacks, and back at the day, it wasn't even called panic attack. It was called, neurologists called this vegetative crisis of some sort. At first, it seems to you like you're going mad, that you're losing the control. You might start to feel your legs or arms feeling numb. You might be on the verge of losing your consciousness. And about half a year later, I went to a psychiatrist. We talked for a long time, and he said that I'm gonna have some that I have a bipolar disorder. My parents and my husband, my first husband, at that point, they tried to support me. But really, to understand what's happening, it's very hard if you haven't felt that, haven't been through that. Luckily, I found a support group on Facebook. It's big, it's international, and you can always text there what's happening in your life, and you're gonna be supported, really. When I was diagnosed, I didn't feel myself different, and I didn't start to suffer from this, because I understood that a lot of things in my life can be corrected with the right scheme of medications, with psychotherapy, and with the right lifestyle. My first specialty is economics, and my specialty is marketing management. I worked in this specialty for more than 5 years. Then I left, and I learned to visage it, and then I started to do grimming, and then I started to do art projects. I decided that I'll adapt myself, I'll kind of ensure myself with the art from all sides. If you're diagnosed, you have to accept it, learn to live with it, and learn to be happy in your life with it. Today and right now, I'm gonna do what I like to. I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna do art, I'm gonna communicate to pleasant, good people. and I'm gonna be happy right here and right now. I'm for living a full, complete life. Right. Thank you very much for the video. Thank you very much, Nasta, for taking part in the program. And also thank you for the invitation. Thank you for sharing. As for me, a very optimistic and very positive video. How much this path, this way to accepting yourself and accepting that you really want to share this with others, how hard and long was it? Well, first of all, I was diagnosed in about 12 years ago, and I didn't believe that. I had anxious depression, and I treated with some antidepressants with neurologists, and then it kind of went like that for 10 years, and I thought that I just have bad character and not a disorder. And I referred with depression to a psychiatrist about 3 years ago when I understood that I can't handle it anymore. I cannot do anything on my own. I do need a specialist and pharmaceutical scheme. Then yeah, it's quite a long time. It's been quite a long time, but it can be different. Sometimes, you know, people don't refer for help up to 50 years old because it's not perceived by the society, by a lot of people, as something serious, as a disease. You refer to a doctor when you know, can't get off the bed at times. Yeah, it's obvious now that this path was long, but your way of sharing the story with the world, how hard was that? How hard of a decision was that? Well, about for half a year had been in therapy, and I wasn't given a final diagnosis. My psychiatrist observed me. But then when I developed mania, I left her. She changed the pharmaceutical scheme a little bit, the regimen. And that day I went on and just wrote on Facebook about my disease. And for me it was very important. Because when I got ill, back then, 12 years ago, when I talked to a psychiatrist, nobody even knew about this. And even they didn't even know what a panic attack was. It was called vegetative crisis, as I said in the video. And this was not considered depression. It was not treated in any way. So back then, for me to take antidepressants, it was a very important step. I did not know what else to do other than to take these medications. So I came to the condition, such a bad, severe condition. And I understand that for myself, I kind of understood that there are a lot of people like that. I have a lot of subscribers on Facebook and I have a lot of friends. And if I can help anybody in any way, then yes, I'm going to do that. And people did refer to me. Quite a lot of people talked to me, they texted me, thanked me, took my contacts of my doctor, of psychiatrist. Question now, wasn't it scary? I mean, from the point of view of how people are gonna perceive this information, or did you not care about that? Oh, somehow it was not scary. No, it wasn't. It wasn't scary. Why am I asking? Because we're launching this program. We want people from all around Ukraine to join in. And I suspect that some of the people might be scared to share. They're going to be worried about how other people are going to perceive, how their environment is going to perceive, and how people that are going to read this, how are they going to perceive it. I don't know, it's hard to give advices here, but why is it important to do this from your point of view? It seems to me that just so we don't perceive this as something super very scary, because it can be treated. Yes, you are ill for the rest of your life, but the symptoms of disease, thanks to pharmaceutical therapy, they might be, how do you say this in Ukrainian? They can be managed. And maybe in the future, the disease will be treated. We don't know that. And it seems to me, of course, the fact that I'm in that I do artistic work, that helped me. I was not scared. Maybe if I worked at my old job that I worked at after the university, maybe I wouldn't have written the post. But still, you can share within some closed community of support community, for example. It's just something that kind of really wants to get out from the within, and you have to talk to somebody about that. Some people talk to their psychiatrist about that. You know, it's you can't just walk with it. You can't hold it in yourself. You kind of feel there's a desire to share. There's a desire to get support. There's a desire to understand that you're not alone in this. And when you wrote this post, what happened in your life? I mean, from the point of view of publicity, because right now you write a lot about mental health and you share a lot of experience. Probably people refer to you for some advice, or you inspire people. To what extent that changed your life? Or did it not change your life? No, yes it did. It did change. I even launched a project where I invited people to face art, and I have a list of questions that they answered on various disorders, and depression, and anxious disorder, and bipolar disorder, and schizoaffective disorder. And some people texted, thanks, yeah, thanks. I started to notice this in myself and approach it structurally. And they understood that it's not scary to go refer to a doctor. It's not Soviet Union anymore, that you can really go refer for help and people are going to help you. And life is going to get better. The quality of life is going to improve. So what do you do now? Well, right now, I work as a creative physicist. I do face art, body art, and a little bit I start to work as a food stylist. I like that direction a lot. But with your disorder, with any chronic disorder, something that we've mentioned with you again, you've shared it, how do you make it so that the mental disorders are accepted just like any other diseases, like something that you really have to refer for help with, and you get treated, and then you live full, complete life, and nothing stands in the way? But sometimes there are still ups and downs, aren't there, with your condition? How do you work with it? I'm interested in how do you work with your environment? How do you work with your close ones? Do they understand that you're a little worse or a little better? How do you interact with your direct environment? How important is it to have people near you that support you and understand what's happening? Or is it not important at all? No, it is very important indeed, because in some conditions, however conscious you are, you might lose the critic, you know, and it would be really nice if your husband or mother or father, somebody from your close environment would say, something is not quite right here. Turn your attention, pay attention to this, because you are behaving somewhat little off, little odd, and it seems to me that maybe you do need to talk to your doctor. And the doctor is, we constantly keep in touch, because bipolar disorder is the kind of disorder when even with the best pharmaceutical regimen, it might just stop working at any time. And it, you know, doesn't depend on you. It might be some external trigger or some internal processes in your head when the regimen just stops being effective, just stops being valid for you. Please tell me, in your family, how hard was it to accept this, to your parents, for example, your diagnosis, and basically to understand that this is happening and this has to be treated? Because we face this a lot of times when we did interviews with other people who have mental disorders, that with the family, specifically with the parents, it's very hard for young people because the parents don't want to accept that. Parents always say that, oh, maybe you'll grow from this. Or maybe you're just in a bad mood, or it's just a period time like that. How much of that experience did you have? Well, I actually kind of read a lot about the bipolar disorder, and I think I managed to bring that information to them in a right way, and my parents support me greatly and understand. And I'm trying to share what's happening to me within those posts, for example, on Facebook. It's so interesting. Yeah, and they support, and I'm very thankful to them for that. And my husband supports me as well, and my friends. I have a lot of people around me who, like, for example, if you are in a depressive mood and you've texted that on Facebook, then somebody would send you a little gift. And this helps, and this supports. Yeah, this supports a lot. These small signs of attention, like people might send you some piece of chocolate or something like that. It's not that expensive in itself, but as kind of a sign of attention, it's very important and supports a lot. Could you please share one more thing? One of the goals, one of the objectives of the Mental Health Ambassadors Program for people with some problems to communicate with one another and support one another. How important is that for people who face these problems? How important is it for them to see how it happens in other people? Maybe get some advice or just to communicate. The formation of these communities, how important is that? I think that it's very important. I'm one of the moderators in a big Facebook group, in the International Group of Support on Facebook. And indeed, the depth to which you can understand what you're doing, it's only another person with same disorder might understand that. Can you do that in Ukraine? Yes, still, right. In Ukraine, there are support groups online. There are people who do these groups online. There's even a group for relatives and friends of the people with with bipolar disorder. Oh, yeah, great, because it's one of the goals of the Ambassadors Program for people to understand that. That's where they can communicate with people who have the same disorder, who are going through some treatment, and get this information from, first-hand. Because if we're talking about some physical or organic disease, that's certainly important. Understand that with any diseases, that's important. I think it works well for all disorders and disease. I think that doesn't matter. You really have to share it. And I'm very glad that you're with us. I'm really glad that we make this video. It's one of the first projects that we're going to launch for the Ambassadors Program. Sharing it on the social media and inviting other participants of the Ambassadors Program to join in. And I think that your experience, what you just told us, your optimism, your beauty, I'm trying to stay optimistic. Of course, that doesn't always work out, but I still, I come back to, I think that you can really live your full, complete life with the disorder as well. And that's why we're really I sincerely believe in that. I think that, faith is a very important thing in overcoming anything, specifically when you live with some chronic, because you can say that this is a chronic disorder. Yeah, right, exactly, it is a chronic disorder. And I very, very much hope that your example will inspire other people, not only from Kiev, and not only from artistic specialties, but from other different points of Ukraine to join our program. And right now I'll ask to show how you can join our program. We have a website. Yeah, we'll share the screen and you'll be able to see it. We'll share a website on the screen, which sounds like MH4U in Ukraine /ambassador. You can go to this website and you can fill in a brief application for participation. You have to mention your name, the contact, the brief description of motivation. Basically, during the day, our coordinator will contact the potential ambassador to confirm and to determine the next steps in the program. And what we plan to do, because we really want to help people, it's going to be a training for the ambassadors. We will definitely provide some informational materials with which people will be able to use and process, and we'll create a community of the ambassadors, and both in the social media. And we will hope that the quarantine and the whole COVID situation will get better in our country in order to create some events, physical in-person events in different parts of Ukraine where our ambassadors will be able to share their experience with other people, and in that way change the situation with the attitude to this problem, and with basically so that our society would be healthy and the attitude towards the problem. So yes, I thank you a lot, Neste, for our talk, for our conversation. I wish all of our guests and all of our listeners good health. Please take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time very soon. Thank you very much.